Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello there. How are you guys doing today? Jackie Woodside here, the founder and the host of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. I am just so grateful that you're one of the people that cares about this topic of conscious living and that you spend your time with me every week or as often as you can listening to the Conscious Living Podcast, because I really do believe that it's one of the key factors of elevating our experience of life and, in fact, elevating life on the planet itself. You know, one of my visions is to create a world that works for everyone, a world where love prevails. And you can't do that when people are unconscious and just being driven by the whims of the ego. So I have a huge commitment to raising consciousness on the planet. And at each of these shows, I seek to bring in people who have compelling narratives about this notion of how to be more awakened, more enlightened, more conscious in our day-to-day lives. And I'm excited today to bring to the Conscious Living Podcast Dr. Mik Ludwig, who is a extraordinarily talented and an interesting psychotherapist, theologian, and philosopher. What a great combo. Take that in again. He's a psychotherapist, theologian, and philosopher, best known for his personal, pragmatic, and progressive approach, and I would say somewhat funny as well, to integrative psychotherapy, spiritual theology, and humanistic philosophy. So I'm sure with that intro, some of you are going to zone out and change the channel right now, and then others of you will be up on the corner of your seat and can't wait to dive in. It is a small subset of our culture that's interested in those topics, but Dr. Mik and I are two of them who are quite passionate about this intersection of spirituality, philosophy, and psychology, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Dr. Mik, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Do you mind just saying a little bit more about yourself so our listeners can get to know you a bit?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's a great honor to be with you, so thank you for having me on. And to talk about myself, I guess I would just start with the idea of being born and raised into a very religious household, and then being introduced to the martial arts as a child. I was very hyperactive. And so they put me in the martial arts where I learned about Zen and learned how to meditate and learned how to slow myself down and get centered. And that opened up a whole world of religious study for me. So I started to branch out into yoga, Hinduism, Taoism, all of those different disciplines. I don't think I left anything alone. And it culminated in a vision quest experience that I have done some podcasts on before, where I actually had a near-death experience. I developed hypothermia during the vision quest. So from there, my world opened up into my mission, because the idea of the vision quest is to establish your direction and where you're to take your life. And that led to psychology, theology, and philosophy, although I would say that those were with me even as a young child with the martial arts. I also have a military and law enforcement background before I became a psychotherapist. So I like to say I've seen it all and I've heard it all.
Yeah. I can imagine. That is fascinating about your vision quest and your death experience. Do you mind telling me a little bit more about what type of a vision quest was it? What led you to doing it? And then obviously it sounds like something went wrong. What went wrong? And then, gosh, I'm not supposed to ask so many questions all at the same time. But lastly, what happened during your near-death experience? So just dive into that story. It sounds quite fascinating.
Well, what went wrong actually went right in the long term, as we say, as therapists. Sometimes what we see as a negative experience may be leading us to something higher and positive. So the vision quest, I was trained by a Native American shaman, a Native American tribal member. As a warrior, I was always interested in this. Vision quest comes across a lot with military and with martial arts and things. So I wanted to do it. I felt called to it. And I trained in it with him and learned about how to do it. We did the sweat lodge, which is a dehydrating experience.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it was January, and I was going out into the state game lands of Pennsylvania near a place called Indian Steps, which is a fascinating place that folks might want to look up on the Susquehanna River. And as I was trained, I roped off an area and I entered into the area with a vow that I would not leave the area until I received the vision. And this is a tradition within the Native American. They take the brave out. The Sioux drop them into a pit and come back about 48 hours later.
Wow.
So there I am. I'm dehydrated, but cleansed by the sweat lodge, and I'm fasting from food. And I have a small fire, and I'm in my military fatigues, and I have some cold weather gear on. So it wasn't completely insane.
Great.
And I prayed for my vision. So I meditated and I took a little flute along and I played it. And I just they say beg for your vision.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere about maybe the 36th hour, I know that it was very deep into the second night, a cold front came in and with it a bunch of snow.
Oh, wow.
So it doused my fire. And so now I was in trouble because someone dropped me off and was not to come back until the 48-hour mark. So I was quite a few hours away from the pickup. So at that point, I started to develop hypothermia. And because my blood was so thick from the dehydration, my heart went into a tachycardia, which is a rapidly racing heart. So also with hypothermia, you become exhausted trying to stay warm.
Oh, wow.
And also, being out in the elements. So I was starting to drift off and come back and drift off and come back. And when I would drift off, when I would come back, I would be so freezing and shivering and so cold. And they say just before you transition from hypothermia, your body, you get this sensation of warmth. Yeah. Everything reverses and you just suddenly feel warm and at peace. And I had that experience. And at that moment, I was pushed into the vision. I kicked into the vision. The whole area that I was at became covered with a dome of light. And everything there was charged with light. It was almost like seeing it on an atomic level. And everything was just teeming with life. And there was such a sense of peace. And the various world religious leaders that I had studied, and some I didn't even know about, came towards me and they passed me. They were kind of floating in the air. We're talking now about a vision caused by electrolyte imbalance, but also spiritually granted. And these religious leaders had just a look of compassion. They're basically smiling. And finally, a religious figure stopped in front of me in full form. And this religious leader had such a deep look of compassion and care. And this was Yeshua, who many people call Jesus. So Yeshua then was present to me and helped me to feel that I was going to be okay. And also just presented to me as like my avatar, if you will. Kind of a reminder that Christianity was what I was raised with and could be my operative metaphor, but now I could expand it and become more evolutionary. So I like to use the word evolutionary spirituality or progressive Christianity. Well, I knew I was released from the vision stopped and I knew I was released and I slid down the mountain and almost went into a creek, which would have been the end of things because I would have been wet. But I came right to a place where a tree had fallen and I crossed and I got on a path and I started walking. And at this point, I was just saying, which way, Lord? Which way? Because there were Ys in the path and I would go where I was inclined to go. I'm staggering now because I'm completely depleted and exhausted. And I finally reached the summit of a hill and came out into an opening and saw nothing. And I said, it's over.
Right.
The snow was 10 inches deep.
Oh,
so,
my gosh.
Yeah. So I fell back and made a snow angel, but I didn't make the angel. I made a cross.
Yeah.
So can you visualize just giving up and falling back into the snow? And I just laid there and just waited to transition. And I looked to my left and saw another dome of light, but this time it was a real dome of light because there was a farmhouse tucked down in the valley in the middle of nowhere now. So they don't get visitors at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right, right.
So I shuffled down there and I knocked on the door, and a gentleman about my age, I was about 22 or 24 at the time.
Oh, wow.
He answered the door, and I asked him if I could use his phone to call for help. And he said, "Come inside." And he took me in and put me by the wood stove and gave me water. So this is the most interesting part. His wife came down the stairs to see what was ado. There's, what's happening at 4 o'clock in the morning. We don't get guests here.
Right.
I like to joke that I imagined he would have come to the door with a shotgun.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so she came down the steps and she looked at me and she said, "Michael, what are you doing?" And I said, wait, did we go to school together? She said, "Yes, we went to school together, high school. And you're my sister. I'm your sister's husband's cousin."
Wow.
She said, "How did you get here?" And I said, "Well, I just trusted God. I trusted Spirit. And I turned when I was told to turn." She said, "There were many houses closer to you that you could have gotten to first, but they're not necessarily friendly people there."
Oh, wow.
So somehow I was guided directly to this house of someone who knew me and who was able to care for me and give me water and help me until services arrived to take me to the hospital. And then I went to the hospital and got hydrated, and they got my electrolytes squared away. And I was sent home then with all of this having happened. And I slept for a little over 12 hours.
Wow.
And then I awoke and it was time to live with the vision.
Wow. That
Yeah.
the very compelling story. The people that were supposed to pick you up, where did they end up in this story? Did they reconnect with you in the hospital? Like, what was their role as you got rescued or rescued yourself, really, in this quest?
Yeah, the ambulance passed him as he was pulling out of my driveway to come and get me.
Okay.
So, and then he was contacted to be told that I wasn't there anymore. I'd gotten another ride.
Gotten another ride. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then, wow, fascinating story. Where then did it lead you, Mick? And,
Exactly.
this whole new vision for yourself in your life. You're a very young man in your early
Yes.
20s. Had you already had military service by then?
Yes. My military service was completed.
It's completed.
4 years active duty, and then probably about 8 years of reserve and National
Okay.
Guard service.
Okay. So your military was complete. So yeah, how did you use that vision quest to guide and direct your life?
Yes, exactly. The whole point of the vision quest is to then interpret the vision as a guiding light for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I took from the vision, and again, working with the shaman, with the interpretation, was that all of the world religions are valid. I like to say they're all right and they're all wrong.
Right.
Right. And yeah, but that Christianity was my operative metaphor, we would say, because I was versed in it and it's the language that I spoke. And so I kind of, reconnected to Christianity for a time, kind of went in a little bit more with the traditional Christianity, which is kind of counterintuitive to all of this, but gets better later. And spent some time, got ordained in ministry and did that whole trick. And then the universal started to return. And I started to study the church fathers and the mysticism of the church. And I started to see that many of these people were not company people. Hildegard von Bingen, for example, a great saint in the church, but very controversial. And she said that what she saw going on in the church was not true in her showing, meaning in her spiritual intuition and understanding. So I then started to really move into more of the metaphysical, the esoteric Christianity, and my childhood studies, my young man studies in all the world religions came back and integrated. And I became, I guess, what we would call an esoteric Christian, but also a universalist.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, who were some of the metaphysical teachers that you were studying? I'm just curious because I also share that passion with you. So
Yes.
curious
Yes.
who we both have studied.
Exactly. So I went to Wat Thai Buddhist Temple down in DC and learned Theravada. I learned Vipassana meditation there.
Yeah.
Himalayan Institute up in the Himalaya. Well, you would probably be familiar with where that is.
In New York.
And a lot of work with Carlos Castaneda at that time.
Wow.
And also Krishnamurti was
Yeah.
very influential for me. And let me think, who else was I reading? Well, then I eventually learned about Reuben Swinburne Clymer.
Oh, I don't.
Who is he? Yes, he's the founder of the Fraternitas Rosicrucis
Oh,
in
the
Quakertown.
Rosicrucians. Yeah.
Yes, but he came out of a tradition from a gentleman named Pascal Beverly Randolph, who is a fascinating African American figure who knew President Lincoln and was very beloved by President Lincoln. And the Rosicrucian studies then open you up to Western mysticism
Yeah.
and alchemy and all of those different traditions. So those integrated then also
Nice.
to what I call evolutionary spirituality these days, which is under psychotheosophy.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us more about that psychotheosophy. What is it and what does it entail and how do you use it in your practice?
Yeah, so I trained at Loyola University in what was called the pastoral counseling department.
Okay.
So it is, they offer a master's and a doctoral degree in fully accredited. And, I think it's trying to think of the accrediting agency that works with these. It's not APA, but it's ACA, American Counseling Association. And so I did my master's and my doctorate in an approach to psychology that integrated spirituality quite purposefully and received graduate training in theology. I was more geared towards the hermeneutic phenomenology. So I did a qualitative dissertation versus a quantitative. Quantitative just doesn't compute for me, pun intended.
Say more. So what did you study in your dissertation?
I actually did a qualitative study on men who are adjusting their masculinity to current trends. So I talked about toxic masculinity there and how men can still be men,
Yeah.
but we also have to own the fact that there are some parts of our masculinity that are extremely unhealthy for us and for others in the world. So I took on the patriarchy, but also kept some masculine constructs like it's okay to do martial arts and to love sports and to be strong.
Be strong, yeah, yeah, and
Yes,
use that strength for good, rather than the
yes.
toxic ways that our culture has gone with masculinity. Well, that's interesting. And what was the outcome of the study that you did with your dissertation?
Yeah. So the summary would be that men want to still be allowed to be men. So they don't want to be completely, have their masculinity erased, but they are willing to look at the parts of their masculinity that are unhealthy and make those changes. And they actually want to make those changes. Men want to be told that they can cry. Men want to be acknowledged that the things that happened to them in their upbringing were abusive. And so men are seeking an integration.
It's really great. Wow. Did you
Yes.
publish it? Did you publish your dissertation?
It is published just through ProQuest, so not really as a book or anything, but through ProQuest. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So is your practice was psychotheosophy? Yeah, I mean, say more about it. How do you integrate psychology and spirituality as as a modality of practice?
Exactly. So I practiced integrative psychotherapy for quite some time. We weren't allowed to be integrative in my graduate program because they make you pick a paradigm and then, stand for it and be able to prove that you're versed in it. And I chose the psychodynamic at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as soon as they set me free and I got that, my dissertation was defended and they said, "You're doctor now." I said, "Thank you very much. I'm integrative again now."
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, yeah.
So with integrative psychotherapy, then we're talking about being able to bring in the whole person and every aspect of that person and every domain of that person. And the spirituality and even the religion is a part of that. And the people that came to me were very eager to have their spirituality be a part of their treatment.
Yeah.
And we never start out with it. We never force it. We don't say, we don't proselytize. We simply allow the process to be open so that they can bring the spirituality. But when you're versed in it, you're able to work with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And spiritual paradigms are so powerful, and metaphors, because they have a potency, because they reach very deep into the person and into the psyche. So when you can learn how to use spiritual psychological interventions, you can really get to the depth of a person and help them to really do some deep internal change work through the spiritual paradigm.
All of that, I love what you're saying, and I agree that, you almost can't have spiritual growth without psychological growth, and you can't have psychological growth without spiritual growth. They really are so intertwined. But, give us a practical example of where you helped someone kind of claim integrate their spirituality and their psychology towards a type of healing or growth.
Sure. Well, the one that comes to mind would be someone coming in with obsessive compulsive disorder. And we will want to talk to them about a God that is loving. And if they're Christian, then we talk about the shift from the Old Testament to the New Testament, from a kind of scary, frightening kind of God to this God of love and God of forgiveness. And the first thing, and it's almost every time for someone versed in scripture, they will say, but there's a scripture that says, be ye perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And they'll use that perfection in the Bible to justify their perfectionism in their OCD.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the biblical languages, the Greek word for perfect in that scripture is teleos. And teleos does not mean perfect. It's a mistranslation in the King James Version and subsequently in some other versions. The word teleos actually means to be mature, to be grown up, to be evolved, right? And so when you can help people see that and you diffuse their use of scripture to support their perfectionism, and then to embrace this God of love, this universal God, then they start on a path of healing and they're able. So that's one example of how I would use a psycho-spiritual integration.
That's really beautiful. And it ties so perfectly with the, kind of my thing about living life consciously. There's so
Absolutely.
many ways, of, I don't even call it like spiritual abuse of taking, taking certain parts of the Bible and interpreting them a certain way. You referenced the Greek translation, but there's also the Aramaic translation of,
Yes.
the original writing of the scripture, which is so different than how it, has been passed down over the years. But part of my own journey in recovery, I was raised kind of conservative Catholic, very Catholic, very involved in Catholic youth ministry. And then I went and got involved in Youth for Christ, which was a conservative evangelical movement. And I'm sure you're familiar with that. It was a wonderful experience for me. And from that, I ended up going to a conservative evangelical college, and played basketball there. But it was also where I came out as gay, and almost got thrown out. The only way I didn't get thrown out was by denying it. And so my journey of just kind of dark night of the soul of feeling completely like I was lost and I couldn't be both gay and spiritually evolved, growing spiritually. I don't know that I guess at the time I thought, I can't be a Christian and be gay. I don't think that way any longer, of course, but and then got involved in a very conservative evangelical church after college, where they threw me out when I talked about the fact that I'm gay. They threw me out of the church and out of the house, and I was homeless for a time because of that.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't throw me. You have to choose, but choosing the church also meant I had to quit my job and change my career because there was too many gay people in that field. So, which all of that I just described, I now consider kind of spiritual abuse and how people cherry pick certain translations of the Bible. And we see it, still rampantly today of people cherry picking pieces of the Bible and saying it means this, and, and now making laws according to these interpretations. And it was really just to round out my journey. I was led by God and by Spirit to the Unity and New Thought spiritual tradition,
Yes. Yes.
which is a metaphysical interpretation of Christian theology. and very different based on the Aramaic translations, and very, very different interpretation of Christianity. And, almost like I could say I've been redeemed in my spiritual life and my spiritual walk. So
Wonderful.
when I share that with you, Dr. Mick, what do you hear in that? I'm sure you hear similar stories with patients and clients of yours. What's your
Yes.
thought about from a psychotheosophy approach of, what I just called spiritual abuse?
Yes. Yes. Well, fundamentalism, I believe to be one of the most dangerous things in the world today. Any kind of fundamentalism, and Christian fundamentalism exists as well within Catholic and Protestant and in almost anything. I know some Rosicrucians who are fundamentalists in their way of approaching their Rosicrucianism. So I like to use a little bit of humor here. It's a kind of a humorous, a sarcastic kind of, you've already learned that I have some of that going on. The Pennsylvania German dry humor, I think you mentioned.
Right.
So I like to say, hey, did you ever hear of an angel fly, or did you ever see an angel fly? And like, wait, what? An angel fly? And I say, yeah, kind of like a dragonfly, but it's an angel fly. Haven't you ever seen one? And they're like, no. I say, well, I can prove that they exist with the Bible. John said in Revelation, I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven. Right? So he's talking about an angel flying, of course, flying by.
Yeah.
If you want to latch on to that literally, you could say there are angel flies, and the Bible proves it.
The Bible proves it, right?
Yeah. So this sola scriptura thing, again, a fundamentalist, dangerous kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when you can help people understand where they got their Bible, because a lot of fundamentalists don't understand where the Bible truly came from and how it was created through the church councils.
You're right.
So that's
How
one
many books of the Bible just didn't make the cut.
It's
Referring to the Gnostic Gospels and
exactly
all of the books that just didn't make the cut, and
right.
so much spiritual wisdom in the books that didn't make the cut into the official Bible. Yeah,
They were closer to Yeshua. The Gnostics were closer to Yeshua.
right.
And these bishops that came later and determined what books would be included and which ones would get you killed, quite honestly, was decided by people who were so far removed from what Yeshua was actually wanting to bring. Yeah. So that would be the way I'd approach the fundamentalism. And then as far as the sexual orientation or gender identity, to talk about a God of love and to talk about how spirituality transcends, right? Whatever those orientations may be, we are all called to be oriented towards divine union with God. And
I love the parable where it says, "He who has not sinned should cast the first stone."
Absolutely.
And that kind of sums it up right there. Don't judge. Don't judge. Yeah. It was quite a journey, and and I'm so grateful. I do very much feel like I was divinely led to the kind of metaphysical, philosophical, ontological studies that I then got into, and some must feel like I was born again, and had that opportunity to reignite that spiritual flame inside of me that, of course, never was there to be extinguished. It was hidden from me with these layers of fundamentalism that were cast upon me. And I agree with you. It's fundamentalism in any form. There's some really good research studies by Mark Waldman and I can't remember the gentleman Andrew Goldman. I don't know. Mark Waldman and Andrew something. They have done some really good studies and find that across the board, people who have some kind of religious affiliation, religious connection, spiritual affiliation, spiritual connection are happier, except people who profess fundamentalism. And they are less happy, more stressed, kind of more judgmental, tense, and feel more angst at the world when they're people who profess fundamentalism. So
under bondage. They're under bondage. These people are under extreme pressure.
Right. It's so true.
Yes. God bless them. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm so grateful to know that you're someone who's out there integrating, a healing journey that includes spiritual recovery, spiritual spiritual
Yes.
healing as part of our journey. And I love this notion, that you cannot grow spiritually without growing psychologically, and you cannot grow psychologically without growing spiritually. They are one
Yeah.
and the same. And part of the spiritual journey is, if you will, taming the ego. Is they use your mind to train your brain, mind being your connection to the mind of God.
Yes.
Use that
Yeah.
connection to divine mind to train your brain to be able to have a better experience in life and not be so reactive by the ego being triggered by its fears and insecurities. And that's
Absolutely.
as much as spiritual as it is a psychological process.
We are souls that live in bodies that have minds, all of which is animated by spirit.
Mm.
I'll say that again. We are souls that live in bodies that have minds, all of which is animated by spirit. That's the anthropology, the spiritual anthropology of a human person. So you are not your mind. I say to people, you own your mind. Your mind does not own you.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, but that's a developmental process, because without some form of training around conscious living or awakening, your mind does own you, and you don't even know you're being owned by your mind.
Exactly.
I love that.
You're not just an ego. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you're
think
not your ego, right?
right. So when people learn that they're a soul that lives in a body that has a mind and that they're not their mind, and we create that separation,
Yeah.
it's life changing for them, and it sets them on the path. Then, yeah,
It really is life changing. I tell my students, be careful not to believe everything you think, because your thoughts are just patterns of neurons firing that have been practiced over time, and you can learn to interrupt them and use your mind to train your brain, connected with the mind of God. That to me is the path both of spiritual awakening and psychological recovery. I really don't see them as any different whatsoever, and I think you and I are very similar in that way.
exactly.
Yeah.
The original meaning of the word psychology, psyche, means soul.
Means soul, that's right.
Yeah. So originally, psychology, which actually evolved out of philosophy of mind, if we really want to be honest. And I mean, who were the psychologists back in 800 or back in BC? They were the shamans.
Oh, nice.
They were the spiritual teachers. They were the mystics. Those were the psychologists of that day. So psychology, I always say, is inherently spiritual. To study spiritual psychology is kind of a misnomer, because I consider all psyche.
All psychology is spiritual, and us spirituality is the psychological roots to it. I could talk to you all day, Dr. Mik. This has been a very engaging and enlightening conversation. If people are interested in working with you, either as a coach or a psychotherapist, do you work with people remotely and outside of your office?
Yes, licensed in Pennsylvania to provide psychotherapy and counseling proper, which are covered under state licensure, but then open worldwide, actually, internationally, to the coaching work, which includes spiritual direction and includes, your general transformational coaching, which is life maximization, if you will. But then also, working with the evolutionary spirituality, the spiritual and vibrational science, and this term that I coined, theosomatics, which is an embodied. Maybe that's another cast that we could talk about, theosomatics. Yes.
Yeah, I would love that. Just give us a very quick phrase of what it is, and then maybe we'll come back to it on another show.
Theo being God, somatics being the body. So again, this takes us out of fundamentalism and into progressive and evolutionary spirituality, that the body is holy. The body is not an accursed thing, and the earth is not an accursed thing. These things are imbued with the Spirit of God. The Creator's essence is in it. It all is God. Mm-hmm. And therefore we are God. And boy, do you ever get in trouble saying that?
Right. I once ran a retreat where it was called, I think, the Psyche and the Soul, or Self and Soul, something like that. And that was kind of the culminating crescendo of the retreat, is that you are God. And I gave everyone laminated cards with a picture of a person standing in a beam of light. And yes, that's absolute blasphemy from a fundamentalist perspective. But from a metaphysical perspective, if God is omnipresent, there is no spot where God is not. That means you are part of the ocean of God's self, God expression, and there is no separation. I love that.
For those who have trouble with that, I say, okay, just make the G a lowercase g
Right.
for yourself. And then you can
Right.
keep an uppercase G for the Most High and Holy God, right? But at least acknowledge that you are a lowercase g. And it even says it in the scriptures. Is it not written, ye are gods?
That you're God.
Yahweh himself said that. Yes.
Exactly right. I love that. Wow, so much that we can dive into. I would love to do another show on that. So thank you so much for your time and being with us. I really look forward to continuing our conversations over time and on another episode. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. What a pleasure it's been.